Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to take a look at two of the most popular aftermarket coolers on Amazon. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at two really popular coolers, the Hyper 212 LED and the Deepcool Gammaxx 400. Now, both of these CPU coolers are compatible with pretty much every socket available apart from Threadripper, and have got a wide range of fitting kits supplied with them to suit most platforms. Both of these coolers are very similar in the way they dissipate heat and the way they're manufactured. But let's take a closer look at them and see what the differences are and which one is going to be more suitable for your build. Okay, so the first things first, what most people come down to when they're building a system, either a budget system or any kind of system really, is down to price. Now, both of these coolers vary in price wildly, especially on Amazon. Currently, it is April 2018 in the UK, and the Gammaxx 400 can be bought for around about £25, and the Coolermaster Hyper 212 LED is around about £35. Both of these prices are currently from Amazon. There are slight rebates available, or slight discounts available for buying Amazon warehouse deals, slightly used ones. You still get the same warranty, but you can get a slightly better price because of damaged packaging, that kind of thing. Another potential option is with the Hyper 212 LED, there are actually other colours available and other styles available, which you can sometimes find a good reduction on, which brings the price down more in line with the Gammaxx 400. Okay, so let's have a look at these two coolers side by side and see what the main differences and similarities are. So as you can see, both coolers are based on a 120mm fan setup, both of which come out of the box with PWM controllable fans, and both are removable. So if you don't like the fan profile or the noise profile, you can always change out the fan for your preferred brand, be it a Noctua or whatever the case may be, but both are removable. Also, with part of the packaging, both of these units are both have the capability of adding another fan to create a push-pull configuration. Both of these come with the spring clips or clasps to enable a push-pull setup. So taking it around to the side profile wise, there's very little between them. The Deepcool is slightly deeper, not by a great deal. So if you potentially have got issues with RAM sticks sticking up from your motherboard, then that is a consideration. Although with the flexible spring mounting clip, you can actually move the clip slightly and move the cooler up higher. This can possibly take away some of the cooling efficiency because some of the fan will be poking up above the heat pipes, but it will allow you to use different types of RAM, especially higher profile sticks. Pretty much the same deal with the Hyper 212, although the clip, which actually retains, can only be moved up probably about a centimetre. So you can still create some more clearance, but not a great deal. As you can see from this side-on profile, the fan actually does sit slightly higher on the 212 than the Gammaxx 400. So already there's a slight advantage of the Hyper 212 over the Gammaxx. So we take a look at the back of this cooler. Now you can already see that the 212 is slightly taller. Now the 212 comes in about 160mm, whereas the Deepcool is around about 153, 154. So if you've got a slightly narrow tower, it's worth bearing that in mind for your clearance against the side of the case. Now also looking through the back, you can probably make out the heat pipes. Both of these units come with 4 heat pipes, which are in a U configuration. And both of these units, as you can see on the base, are designed for direct contact with your CPU. Now talking of both the bases, now if you run your finger across the bases, definitely the Hyper 212, it does feel as if the heat pipes are slightly raised from the base. So potential for some loss of heat dissipation due to it not having a complete contact across the entire surface. Whereas the Gammaxx 400 is possibly one of the smoothest bases I've ever come across, apart from obviously when you polish them up. But out of the box, it's very smooth and very flat. Now talking about the bases, both of the bases have heat sinks or fin assemblies to dissipate more heat straight away from the base. The Hyper 212 It's got slightly larger fins, so that may help heat dissipation, but to be honest with you, I would imagine it's going to be very minimal, if anything. I would say on that particular side of things, it's more of an aesthetic choice rather than a performance choice. Now, whilst we're talking about the bases of these coolers, both of them support the AM4 platform, but in slightly different ways. Now, the Gammaxx has a spring clip, which is attached to the base via the 4 screws on the bottom. Now, you can take the 4 screws off and you can replace this setup with anything else which is in the box, which I'll show you a close-up of. And this is compatible with most Intel LGA platform setups and older AM3 as well. All of this is available straight out of the box, so you don't need to contact them to ask for any additional fitting kits. Now, personally, I prefer the Gammaxx's spring clip setup. It's a lot less difficult to actually attach, and it did appear that with the the AM4 version on the 212 LED, the spring clip had to be I had to put some excessive force on there to get it to clip on, which when you're dealing with any sort of components or circuitry, putting too much pressure is always a little bit nerve-wracking. It hasn't actually caused any damage to the system, but it is quite tricky to attach, and you would need to put the case on a very flat surface to get the pressure onto it. So definitely worth bearing in mind. But coming back to the spring clip on the Gammaxx 400, very easy to get to, and because the slightly larger surface area of this sort of pressure area, it was quite easy to get it to attach onto the standard AM3 and AM4 type plastic clips. Now, coming back to the Coolermaster, the mechanism that this attaches to on the bottom is a little bit hit and miss. So you have to line up the small notch there in between the 2 of the largest fins on the bottom, which can be a little bit tricky. And depending on how you're mounting this system, if you're mounting it out of the box when you're setting up a brand new system, no problem whatsoever. But when it's actually in situ in a case, if it's a little bit cramped, it can be quite difficult to see if that notch is actually aligned properly. And because it doesn't fix in place, it does have a tendency to pop out. So you will need to assemble this on a very flat surface, or at least a steady surface. Whereas with the Gammaxx, because the clip is permanently fixed onto there, as long as you get the at least one of the hooks around your CPU base or CPU clip, you can hang it on and then actually use that as a method of holding it in place while you get the other clip in. So in my mind, the Gammaxx is actually the better design for attaching to the system. Another issue with AM4 systems, because of the way the socket is set up and the way that this Coolermaster cooler is designed, is when you've actually got it in your system, if you imagine the clips are sort of top and bottom, the cooler actually has to sit like that in your system. So it's going to be drawing heat straight up off the graphics card. If you've got a higher wattage graphics card, anything over kind of 120 odd watts, it's going to pull that heat straight up from the graphics card into the CPU cooler and add additional heat that you don't really want. Now, I've tested this with my Ryzen 2200G system without a graphics card, just to give the two kind of like a level playing field to test each other on. In actual fact, during the testing, even though the cooler was this way round, taking heat straight out the back of the system, there was very, very little difference actual heat dissipation wise between the two. So moving on, let's talk about some of the performance we've got from these. So both of these coolers are rated around about 130, 135 watts TDP for CPUs, and I've been using it, like I said, with the Ryzen 2200G, which is a 65 watt part. Now, I have overclocked it from the stock settings up to 3.8 gigahertz, and they have performed really well. Taking into account I've used the stock Wraith Stealth cooler as a comparison, there was actually a really big difference between the cooling efficiencies of these 3 setups. Now, the Wraith Stealth idle, well actually all 3 of them idle wise were about 8 degrees over the ambient temperature of the room. So the ambient temperature of the room is around about 20, 21 degrees, and all 3 of these idled at around about 28, 29 degrees. So idling straight out of the box, then they're all pretty much, it's a dead heat. When it came to running Prime 95 for quite a while, I didn't time it exactly, so it's not a scientific approach, but I ran it for quite a while, probably 15, 20 minutes. And after that, the Wraith Stealth came out at a maximum temperature of 91 degrees, which is a little bit scary. There was no thermal throttling, but still quite high temperature. I know these CPUs can reach that and are safe to do that, but it still scares me a little bit. I don't like to get them that hot. Now, with the Deepcool and the Coolermaster, both of them ended up hovering around the 74 and 73 degrees mark. So that's about a 15-16 degree difference in heat reduction between these two and the stock model. So if you're planning on overclocking your chip, then it's definitely worth investing in these. So that's the temperature comparisons out of the way. And let's talk about some of the noise comparisons. Now, I would say both of these fans, although they're both quite low RPM, I think the Gammaxx has got the slightly wider range of speed settings, up to a maximum of 1500 RPM, whereas the Coolermaster I think tops at about 1400 and starts at about 800, and the Gammaxx starts around about the 600 mark. Now, I've noticed, actually looking up on these and doing a little bit of research, different variations in fan speeds are evident in certain markets. So if you look this up on, say, Amazon, for instance, you're going to get a slightly different RPM range than what you would on maybe another site. So do bear that in mind. If your fan speed is going to be really important to you, it's worth double checking before you make the purchase. But anyway, there is quite a wide gap between the two, as in speed-wise, but I never noticed either one of them actually getting to a point where it was noisy or distracting, or at least noisier than the rest of the components in the machine, such as another 120mm fan or the PSU fan. So both of them, I would say, not silent, but not intrusive by any means. Whereas with the Wraith Stealth cooler, at the higher RPMs, getting up towards around 2400 RPM, and because the fan is a smaller fan, it's definitely more evident, especially under stressful loads. So my conclusion, if you like your system to be nice and quiet and cool, definitely spend the extra money, the 25 or 35 pounds, and invest in one of these coolers. You can also have some fun with overclocking because you've got that much more thermal headroom. If you're quite happy with your Ryzen 2200G or whatever CPU it is and the temperatures aren't too bad, then really it's down to you whether or not you can justify spending the extra money. Personally, I do like the look of these coolers, and they make a otherwise boring system look a little bit nicer. So both of these coolers, pretty much the same. Essentially, it's going to be down to the two main criteria: the fitting options, whether or not you prefer your CPU cooler to be horizontal or vertical, and also it's down to aesthetics. So do you like the look of them? Do you prefer the more kind of blocky look of the Coolermaster, or do you like the slightly different look of the Deepcool? Fortunately for me, I don't have to make my mind up because I've got both of them anyway, but maybe you do have to make your mind up. If you've got any questions about either of these coolers or anything about the Ryzen 2200G, please feel free to put them in the comments section below. But in the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thanks for watching.